Today we are going to be talking about cognitive development. And cognitive development, a child experiences major changes over a very short period of time. For example, the brain is going to triple in weight in the first 2 years, reaching about 75% of its adult weight. And by age 5, the brain is at 90% of its adult weight. As you can imagine, this increase in the size of the brain is going to make it possible to make major advances in cognitive development, including developments in thinking, problem solving, as well as memory. Today we are going to be looking at Jean Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development. They are sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. A way to help you memorize the order of the stages is to use this phrase, "Someone please comfort Fred." So you can see that the first letter of each stage is the first letter of the phrase, and then we have that picture of Fred over in the bottom right hand corner looking pathetic. So again, a way to memorize the order of the stages is "Someone please comfort Fred." You will be expected to know the order. The first stage, as I mentioned, is sensory motor stage. So this is going to be birth to 2 years of age. Make sure you include the ages as well. During this stage, just like it says in the name, students are going to use their senses and motor abilities. So motor meaning moving around, movements, to learn about the world around them. So for example, a baby, you'll see that they put everything into their mouth. That's their way of exploring their world. Or they are crawling around and just handling things, touching things, tasting, pushing. That's sensory motor. That's how they reason and engage with their world. One thing that we see that infants are going to lack in the beginning, and toddlers will develop by the end of this stage, is something known as object permanence. This is the knowledge that an object exists even when it is not in sight. So object permanence. Think of it as, is the object permanent? And in the next slide, we're going to be going through the different stages of object permanence. So here's what it looks like broken down by months. So 0 to 7 months, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. Let's say an adult and an infant are playing, and the adult takes the toy and hides it. The infant is going to act as if this toy never existed. They won't go looking for it. They don't know that the object has gone missing. They don't even realize it. By 7 to 12 months, let's say a child is looking while the adult hides the toy. They will take the time to search for it. But if the adult takes the hidden object and hides it somewhere else that the child didn't see, the child is going to continue searching in that original place and not look further. And then 18 to 24 months, the child is going to continue searching. They're going to look in more places than just where they might have seen you put it, and they will be able to find it. They know that it continues to exist. So again, as you can see, they've developed this object permanence. So again, that realization that objects continue to exist even when they're not in sight. And just a little aside note, peekaboo is going to be an important game to teach children that even though they can't see, for example, their mother's face, when her face is covered and then she uncovers her face, she continues to exist. So this is helping teach object permanence. Pre-operational stage is 2 to 7 years. Again, make sure that you're writing down the ages. And in this stage, it's going to be possible for children to play pretend, to use their imagination and play make-believe, because children are now capable of symbolic thinking, words, and images. It's been really neat we have friends who have a baby. His name is Tyler, and we've gotten to see him grow up from 9 months to now he's 3 years old. And we've gotten to see this transition to where he is able to use his imagination. For example, before it would just be playing with toys for their only function. And now when he's playing, he can make up stories about them and just the way that they interact. And it's just very neat to see him use his imagination and how that's developed. However, in this stage, children are not yet capable of logical thought. A few years ago, a student told me that they went into their mom's second grade classroom, and this person was joking with their mom's students and saying that, well, my hair it actually grows in purple, but I've dyed it brown. And so the children, being in second grade, being in this pre-operational stage, believed this person because, of course, they're not capable of logical thought, so they couldn't reason and say, well, purple isn't a natural hair color. So that's just an example. So more about the pre-operational stage. What we're going to see is children are at this stage are going to be egocentric, which means that they can't see the world through anyone's eyes except their own. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. And we're actually going to get to test this when we go down to the lower school and do tests to see which stage the children are in down there. So for example, if Vicky is asked if she has any brothers or sisters, she says yes, she has a brother named Brandon. But then if you ask Vicky if Brandon has any brothers or sisters, she says no, when of course she is Brandon's sister. So this is something that is an example of egocentrism and the inability to reverse information. Another example is this 2-year-old who climbs out of their crib and they're told by their mother, I don't want to see you in the living room again tonight. And then the 2-year-old comes back in the living room, except this time she has her eyes covered. So she thought that if she couldn't see her mother, then her mother couldn't see her. So again, this is something that is an example of egocentrism. So make sure you have that definition written down. Something else that pre-operational children are going to fail at is something known as conservation. Conservation is the idea that a quantity does not change when its appearance is changed. We're going to be doing different demonstrations tomorrow of conservation of mass, volume, number, and length. So without going into too much detail, an example of that is taking a ball of Play-Doh and then having the same size ball of Play-Doh except squashing the second ball into a pancake and then asking which has more. Well, as you know, they have the same amount, but to a child in pre-operational stage that does not understand conservation, they would say that the pancake has more. Next is concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11 years. And this is when children are able to use logic. Children are now going to understand that conservation. So again, the idea that the quantity doesn't change even though the appearance has changed. And they're going to be able to reason with abstract concepts. So for example, they would be able to understand freedom and be able to explain that it's an abstract principle. The last stage is formal operational. This is 11 to adulthood. And they actually find, well, that people are going to reason in abstract, idealistic, logical ways, and people are going to be able to engage in hypothetical thinking. So an example of a hypothetical question that a person in formal operational would be able to engage in is that would there be fewer wars if only women were elected as heads of state? And people are going to be able to use critical thinking, problem solving, and what has been found, or what Piaget and studies have shown, is that only about 50% of adults are going to reach this stage. Now, that doesn't mean that the adults who don't develop this type of thinking are less intelligent. It just means that they're going to use a more kind of practical intelligence that's better suited to their lifestyle. However, as you can imagine, someone who's in college is going to need this type of thinking in order to be successful in college, and because college requires so many critical thinking, problem solving, and abstract thinking. And as I mentioned, we're going to be doing different demonstrations and working with lower school students with these different stages of development.